short-term high producers that have no self-control and like they got to be off at 3 every day and they don't ever work a weekend or take somebody else's shift or anything. I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about the real long-term high producers. If you watch those guys and gals, they tend to win contests no matter how they're skewed because they have to. Like they see a goal to hit and they hit it.
Welcome to the Waste No Day podcast, a podcast specifically for and about the home services industry as it relates to plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and electrical. More than a podcast, Waste No Day is a credo, a determination, a mindset. It is a never-ending discipline. It is a refuse to lose pursuit. It is a wake-up call every morning to waste no day. Now here's your hosts, Brian Burton and Nate Minnick.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Waste No Day podcast. Your hosts, Nate and Brian, hanging out with you again and looking forward to a great week. It is Monday, if you're listening to this as it drops. Otherwise, we're catching it later on in the week, and we hope that you're having a great week. This is only going to make it even better as we dive into the subject of some of the top traits of the most successful salespeople. It's just going to be Brian and myself today, and we are looking forward to breaking this down for you. Before we get into the meat of the subject, though, it's time for us to have a little bit of an introduction. We're going to turn to Brian for our quote.
Timid salesmen have skinny kids. Zig Ziglar.
Okay. All right. It took me a minute to get there, but I get it. Kind of harkening back to the don't work, don't eat days.
More than don't work. He didn't say lazy salesman. He said shy.
I get it.
Timid. Like not pursuing that no, worrying about getting your feelings hurt, worrying about being embarrassed. And we're going to touch on some of these today.
Right. Yeah. And looking forward to doing that. I mean, we live in a society where, like it or not, we've all become very comfortable with the screen. And I think we can all agree that the screen has made it less likely for us to enjoy and pursue human conversations, which, as of this point, seems to still be a fundamental part of what the in-home services experience is designed to be. So up until that changes, we need to get good at that eye-to-eye contact conversation.
Are you expecting ChatGPT to take that over?
I don't know, man. I mean, it's an interesting subject to talk about what that looks like in the future, but I think there probably is more to come of remote diagnosis and not do it yourself, but like help me do it type concept stuff. Ultimately, I think there's still going to be a person showing up at the door. I don't know if we'll see robotic fixes in our lifetime. Maybe. I mean, you're a lot older than I am, so you probably won't. I might have a chance, but
you think I'm going to miss that, huh?
For the bulk of the people listening, I believe our careers will have mostly face-to-face interactions as part of them.
Yeah, that's for sure. At least in the home services. But yeah, I can see it's kind of spreading its tentacles everywhere, this AI stuff.
Yeah.
So for this episode, I read a couple articles. Actually, I read 3 articles. It was the Business Insider Weekly, not one I was familiar with. And then the Harvard Business Review, one that I read often. And then a Forbes article, which I also read often. But the Forbes article, I didn't find a whole lot of value in, unfortunately, which is not typical for the Forbes articles I read on sales.
Was that the Lions playoff prospects this year?
No, that was the Eagles season last year.
Oh, good comeback. Yeah. Killed it.
Oh,
nice.
Sorry. That was the Nittany Lions, the Penn State season last year. My bad. That's right.
Yeah, well, screw that.
The Eagles at least made the playoffs.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to jumping into that subject because we're all looking to get better, right? I mean, that's the purpose of this podcast. If you're listening to it and you're still listening to us on this particular episode, you're hoping to get better. And we're going to be jumping into some of those personality traits that some of those may be inherent to you and you don't have to work hard for, and others may not be, and you will have to actually work to refine.
Right on. That's exactly what I was thinking about and hoping for when I was putting this episode together. Was like, I don't want to talk about things like your height, right? Like the size of your fingers, things that you can't change and you have no control of. But so when I was looking up the traits, I'm like, I don't want things that are inherent to certain people. But everything that I saw on this list, on these two lists that I ended up using to make the episode out of, one, almost everything I firmly agree with. And two, anything that you don't currently have, you can go to work on. And I really like that part. So I thought it would be cool to, like, obviously we won't do it so much. Maybe Nate will actually listen to this episode for once. Be his first time listening to Waste No Day. But as you're listening, you can go through this list, and as you hear things called out, you can tell yourself, like, on a scale of 1 to 4, where do I fall in that category? And if you fall into a 4, nice job, you're crushing that one. On to the next one. If you fall at a 1 or a 2, jot that one down and start going to work on it. Just take immediate action to say, they're extroverted, and that's going to be one that comes up. Well, I'm not that extroverted. I'm an introvert. I know, hard to believe for Nate, who's been all over the country with me. I'm an introvert naturally. I was very introverted and shy. Even when I got into the selling version of plumbing, it was difficult for me to speak to people I didn't know. And it was difficult for me to speak in groups, even in training. But thankfully I had a mentor who beat that out of me through trial and error. So it's the case for anybody. Whichever one you run into where you're like, yeah, that one's, confidence. They're highly confident. You might not be confident yet, but how do you build confidence? Well, Alex Hormozy would say you build confidence by having a stack of proof that you are who you say you are. And you go out and get that proof. So I'm a beast of a whatever. Now go out and do that thing and become great at it. Improve and get better. And that's how you build confidence.
That's a great point, Brian. And it is something that I think is, if anybody struggles with insecurity in any area of your life, it's difficult to see your way out of that. It's very difficult to see yourself as different than you perceive yourself. Even if you're dreaming about it, it's still difficult to get there. And that's where coaches and friends and auditing your circle, like our man, Jesse Cloud talks about, making sure that you have great people who are helping you out, can help you through some of those inadequacies or insecurities to get to a new place, a new level, and feel more confident in whatever area it is that you're struggling with. So looking forward to today's episode. It's going to be good stuff, and stay tuned as we jump into some of that here. But before we do, it's time for that special part of the week where we highlight one of our great listeners and those of the few who've taken the time to spend typing out a review for us. So Brian, who are we highlighting today?
Awesome. 5-star. Love this show. I listen to current and older shows and always grab something from it. In fact, my team thinks I get something from you guys for always referring back to Waste No Day. So many great speakers, so many great topics. Honestly, cannot thank you guys enough. The Roman one.
Roman numeral one? Because that'd be funny.
I don't think so. That'd be a short name, just a line. No, this says the Roman and then a number 1.
Huh.
Maybe his name's Roman.
Maybe.
And for his team, even though we have no idea what his actual name is, we do pay him to bring up Waste No Day every week.
Yes, we take it out of all of our proceeds.
We take it out all the money we're raking in on this bad boy.
Well, congratulations, Roman, on the pay bump. We'll make sure we double your wages for this week.
Yeah, buddy. And appreciate that shout out from January 5th, 2024. We finally made it into January. We finally made it into 2024. Yes. That was our first review read from this year that we're recording this.
Oh, well,
that's pretty cool.
Roman 1. We appreciate it. And we also appreciate the rest of you. If you would take the time to do the same, we'd sure love to hear your thoughts about the show.
Yeah, we'll catch up quick. So start putting those reviews up there and get your name read, get your company read, whatever you want to do, whatever you throw up there. Almost anything is going to get read. Understand if you go heavy on profanity and stuff like that, Apple isn't going to post it. So you got to keep it clean.
Yes, please keep it clean, as we try to do on this show all the time.
Oh, and if you make a 4, 3, 2, or 1-star review, I'm going to use your name and everything, and I'm going to read it as a 5-star review. So don't do that. 6. I'm actually going to say you left a 6-star review.
Yes. That would be excellent. We appreciate it. All right. Well, we know you're going to appreciate this episode, and it's time now to put both of us in your passenger seat, as well as a couple authors of some articles, as we talk about the top traits of salespeople. Our guest today is the quote unquote top salesperson. This person is unparalleled in sales. They are a maestro whose expertise and insights have revolutionized the world of sales. With a career spanning decades, this top salesperson has consistently shattered records and set new benchmarks, becoming the gold standard in the industry. His ability to understand client needs, build meaningful relationships, and close deals with finesse has earned him a reputation as a true sales legend. Looking forward to this one, Mr. Top Salesperson. Welcome here.
Well, he can't speak because he doesn't actually exist. But
it's true. But I'm looking forward to going through some of these traits.
Yeah, buddy. It's going to be fun.
So, Brian, set us up for, let's give credit where credit is due. You mentioned some of these came from articles. So let's set that up before we jump into the list.
Yeah. So the 14 important traits successful salespeople share was an article in the Business Insider Weekly by Max Friedman. Great article. And he, again, goes through 14 of them. And then we switch over to the 7 personality traits of top salespeople by Steve W. Martin of the Harvard Business Review. And these were a little bit, obviously, this was only half as long. So I liked it more because I actually have to physically force my eyes to read this, which is just, it's a lot of work. Also, in this one, he gave 1,000 top salespeople in different industries a personality test, which I thought was really cool.
All right. So what I'm thinking here is let's quickly go through the entirety of the list. And I want to give the listeners the opportunity to rank themselves. So we'll kind of like read each one and give you a second to think about your ranking of that. So Brian, as you indicated on that scale, define what a 1 is, define what a 4 is, so the listeners know.
So I would say 1, you are as far away from this trait as you can possibly be. So if it says honesty, every word out of your mouth is a lie. Like my grandmother used to say, he would lie if the truth sounded better. Right? Wow. And a 4, you're some mix of Abraham Lincoln and Jesus. Like you can't tell. It just, or was that, sorry, that was George Washington. You cannot tell a lie. Like
they both were Honest Abe. But
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. George Washington too.
Yeah. A lie does not leave your lips. No falsehood whatsoever, which pretty much means you've never spoken because nobody's that honest, right?
We know you.
Right,
we know you.
Nate is.
All right. So 21 traits. We'll give you a second to rank yourself. 1 being the worst, 4 being you got this one in the bag. So number 1, you care about the customer's interests. All right. Number 2, you are confident. Number 3, you are always on. Number 4, you are subtle. Number 5, you are resilient. Number 6, you are extroverted. Number 7, you are a good listener. Number 8, you are a multitasker. Number 9, you provide insight. Number 10, you are persistent. Number 11, you are honest. Number 12, you are focused. Number 13, you are optimistic / upbeat. Number 14, you have a broad worldview and cultural understanding. Number 15, you are modest. Number 16, you are conscientious. Number 17, you are achievement oriented. Number 18, you are curious. Number 19, you lack gregariousness. Number 20, you lack discouragement. And number 21, you lack self-consciousness. There they are. How'd you do, Brian?
Let me think. 21 times 4 is 84.
Quick math. All right. For the electricians out there, that's 100. So well done.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I don't know if you caught it, but lack gregariousness is kind of a direct clash from the Harvard Business Review article, is a direct clash from the Business Insider Weekly article where he said number 6 was they're extroverted. So it's almost a direct clash, right?
It is. And I think there's different strokes for different folks, right? Like,
well, he interviewed a bunch of business experts and probably I'm guessing which were like sales managers and CEOs with high performing salespeople. The other one took 1,000 top salespeople and gave them personality tests. And they scored as less gregarious. So somewhat introverted. And I get it. So I don't know. I'm guessing I score high on extroversion, but that's not where I started. So yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. I wish I could take that personality test. Well, I don't know. I'm not even a salesperson. What am I talking about? I wish I could give that personality test to some of our top salespeople.
Well, what I think we'd like to do here, Brian, so we have 21 opportunities, and let's pick out a couple of these and dive into them a little bit to give some insight on some of these things. And I want to start off with the one that we were talking about earlier, which is confident, right? So that was the second one on the list. They are confident. And I think regardless as to whether it's a personality test or whether they analyze top performers or anything like that, confidence is a given to success. I mean, it's like a prerequisite. You rarely, if ever, find yourself somebody who just stumbled across success without having the confidence that they were going to step forward into it.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't take away like fear. It doesn't take away, trepidation or levels of anxiety or things like that. But there still is a level of confidence that I know where I'm going and I know what I want.
Yeah. And I think that's a two-parter with the confidence. It's also confident in your product or service, right?
Sure.
If you know for a fact your product is the best on the market, your installers are the best in the area, your warranty is ironclad, and anything happens, you're Johnny on the spot to get out and fix it and take care of that client. And you have competitors that are not like that don't answer their phone after 7 or all weekend long. You're going to be significantly more competent than your competitors presenting products, right? Presenting their version of that product, but they don't have all these things backing it. So there's also confidence in what you're presenting. But yeah, walking with somewhat of a swagger, knowing where you're going, like you said, that presents differently than someone who walks up timidly and shy, as Zig Ziglar said, to bring us in.
Yeah, and I think even with that, I mean, I don't know how deep they got into the words, but there is a difference between confidence and braggadocious, or confidence and over the top, just proud in a bad way. You can be quiet and confident. You can be calm and confident. You don't have to be beating your chest every 5 seconds and, bragging your way about everything else. There's a level of confidence that is just perceived, even by the way that you carry yourself. We've had entire episodes on body language. We've had entire episodes on tonality. All these types of things are part of what it means to portray confidence. The ability to just maintain eye contact and look at somebody is an element of confidence. The fact that I'm able to stare into your eyes and look you in the face and say, Mrs. Jones, I think this is the best thing that you should do for your house. And I think I'm the best person to do it for you. That is confidence. I don't have to brag or make a big to-do about, my records or my achievements as much as I do just have to convince Mrs. Jones that there's truth to both of those answers.
Is the person who has to beat their chest constantly really that confident anyway? I mean, if you look at Steve W. Martin's article for the Harvard Business Review, what was the first trait? Modesty.
Correct. Right.
And what did he write about it? He said, contrary to conventional stereotypes that successful people are pushy and egotistical, 91% of top salespeople had medium to high scores of modesty and humility. Furthermore, the results suggest that ostentatious people who are full of bravado alienate far more customers than they win over.
Yeah.
And it's also team orientation is a big one for top salespeople. And those people who are just super me focused and me centered, they alienate themselves from the team. They make it harder to get their jobs done.
So much. And unless you're a sole proprietor and you're out there, just doing this by yourself, which if you are, kudos to you, man. There's always a team in like every home services.
That person still has a team. And you know those contractors out there who are just kind of mean-spirited and it's all about me and all my suppliers are D-bags and all the inspectors are D-bags. That's, not 100% against. No, and you have a team, sole proprietor. Your team is your vendors, the guys behind the parts counter, your wife answering the phones at home, everyone you interact with, your clients, whoever, your subcontractors, these are all part of your team. And the way you treat them will have a large bearing on how successful you get.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about all the external factors, even your accountant, the guy who fixes your van, the guy who, takes care of your stuff when it breaks, the repairman of your tools or whatever you have to provide your services. You're right, Brian. There is a lot of people that are involved, whether they're in front of the curtain or not. Great place to start off as we're looking at some of the traits. Brian, what was one that stood out to you?
Achievement orientation. 84% of top performers tested scored very high in achievement orientation. They are fixated on achieving goals and continuously measure their performance in comparison to their goals. It's funny because if you see your top performers in every team that you're around, Nate, it's funny that like if you just have a competition based on sales, just straight up whoever sells the most that month, it's like, yeah, they win it, right? If there's no measurements to kind of, add in for the fact that they're that much ahead of everybody all the time. But even if you add in for that fact and you kind of change the measurements a little bit, like say you have to raise your average ticket by so many percentage points. It doesn't matter where you're currently at. Right. By percentage, not by dollar amounts. So if you do that, they still win it. They up their game that much because they're achievement oriented. Like if there's a trophy on the line, they're going to get it. They'll typically, now you're flash in the pan, short term, high producers that have no self-control and like they got to be off at 3 every day and they don't ever work a weekend or take somebody else's shift or anything. I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about the real long-term high producers. If you watch those guys and gals, they tend to win contests no matter how they're skewed because they have to. Like they see a goal to hit and they hit it. They see a trophy go up for grabs. They're getting it. They're going to win even if it takes some sacrifice.
Which do you think is more valuable, Brian? Sprinters or marathoners? I'm honestly curious of your answer.
What do you mean?
Like if you translate that into like the sales world, would you rather have somebody who just like breaks all the records and then like gets burned out, a sprinter? Or would you rather have like a steady Eddie, but steadily increasing over time and getting better and better and better for a long time?
Well, I mean, I take great caution in not letting people burn out.
I thought you were going to say cardio, but go ahead.
What does that mean? I don't cardio. What is that? French? I don't speak that language, buddy.
Yes.
So no, I don't want anybody to burn out ever for any reason. I would much rather them be a mediocre performer and stay healthy than burn out, because burnout has implications in every area of their life. And it can really do damage to people's home life and work and career. And people leave great careers that they have all the potential in the world in over the fact that they burned out, typically because they're working themselves to death because they can't let an opportunity pass by, And it's like when you get to a point where your conversion rate is super high and your ticket average is super high and you can run like that, you can pick up an extra call on the weekend here and there and be fine. The place people usually burn out is they're not there yet. And every time not every time, but the majority of the calls they run are what they would consider failures. I mean, they don't sell them or they sell them for very low tickets. And it's just like, give me one more, give me one more, give me one more. And I know because I've been there and then I've seen this happen to other people. It's like one more, one more, one more. Well, it's just stacking failure on top of failure because you're not any good yet. And you haven't put in the time to get good. So burnouts, more times than not, the people who burn out are not really high performers. They're pretty low performers who, to their credit, want it so bad they can't say no. And it takes a leader around them to recognize it and say, I'm saying no for you.
Yeah, but both of them have achievement orientation, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's just the one is, he's 3 months into his truck or 3 months into a company like this, and he wants what took the other person 4 years to get to.
Right.
And he wants it now. Like, that's good. It's achievement orientation, but you got to have somebody around who's seen this movie before and knows what the end is going to look like if we don't change things.
That's something that it's so tough. I mean, I remember when I was like young, married, and, kind of getting into things, it was going fine. And I think my generation probably had a bit more orientation towards like wanting the things of my parents quickly. Like, and when I say the things of my parents, I mean like the income levels and all that type of stuff. And then COVID came and completely jacked it up. Like 18-year-olds going and working and making more money than their parents were making at a 20-year job. And then, of course, social media completely jacks all that up too, because you see these glorification stories of like somebody who hit it big on like a 1 in a million, career choice, or something just fell their way or whatever it is. And it makes you think like, oh, I should be able to get all things instantly without having to do any of the hard work. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, that's just not typically the case. And sometimes I think we get kind of tricked into it by all these like amazing things you see online that are probably fake half the time anyways, that are just telling you like, hey, you should be able to have it all, and you should be able to have it without having to work more than 3 days. You know what I mean? It's like a recalibration of what it means to actually work and earn something, as opposed to just get lucky, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, but how many people get lucky?
Well, that's the thing, right? That's what makes it such a trick, because that's how the internet works.
Yeah, oh man, they're killing me with the memes and stuff right now. I'm seeing tons of them with the, if your heart isn't 100,000% into every move you're making, you're not living your full passion, all this. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? If you don't wake up excited every morning to go do what you do, then you're not living your purpose. It's like, I love being a presentation trainer, right? I love leading a team. I love being a general manager.
Mm-hmm.
I love doing a podcast. How much would I love it if you had given me any one of these roles when I was 23?
Yeah.
So do you know how stupid those memes make me? So angry, because there's some 21-year-old sitting on the foot of his bed, angry that he's got to go swing a pickaxe this morning to learn trade. And then he reads that and he's like, yeah, I'm going to go be a blogger or whatever. Like, he just quits. and that can happen. And it's like, you're not supposed to love that part. I mean, you should enjoy the process. And I think we need to get better overall at enjoying the process of refinement versus like the goal of where we're trying to get to. But nobody loves apprenticeship. I mean, you can have some fun in the meantime, but you're making a crappy hourly watching everybody else get paid, and you're standing around not knowing what to do half the time because you don't have the knowledge and skill required to do what the lead tech is doing. It's like, yeah, it sucks. I mean, there are worse things for sure. There are many industries that don't pay you for an internship, right? But still, it's a horrible feeling. You feel very incompetent. You're underpaid and you have very little use. The only time you're needed is when the HVAC tech needs, a pair of needle nose pliers, and you're going to go run to the truck and get it so he can keep working. Like, it's brutal. It's not a great place to be, but it's temporary. It's short term. You should just work as hard as humanly possible to get out of it and into the driver's seat.
Is this like the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight? Would you align it with that? Which just got canceled, which is such a bummer.
It got canceled?
Yeah, it just got canceled.
Today?
Just like the other day.
Oh, wow. Oh, we're dating this episode because it's going to come out in like 5 weeks or something.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have a lot of hate towards Jake Paul, certainly question some of his upcoming antics and all that stuff, whereas Tyson's put in his hours in the ring, literally, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. Like, I don't love Jake Paul. Like, I can't stand that type of person, But I do believe he's putting a lot of work in, man. I mean,
sure, yeah.
He's out there throwing punches, maybe not with professional boxers, most of the time, maybe not any of the time, but you're talking about people who know how to fight and hurt people. Like, I'm not getting into a squirt gun match with, John Jones. Like, no way. Much less a boxing ring. And he's getting into a boxing ring with a bunch. Yeah, I'm sure he trains plenty hard and has been training for years. So I don't know. Yeah, he certainly skipped some lines, cut some lines by not just going through the proper channels. But he figured something out, man. I'm not mad at him. I mean, I don't want to see him, hear him, or watch anything he does, but I'm not mad at him.
I think I would find some enjoyment in Tyson taking it to him, especially as the old man, the old guard.
And I remember watching Tyson fights as a young kid and just seeing those thunderous hits and thinking, like, I am never going to fight again. Because if one of those catches me, that's over. Yeah, I'd love to see him take him apart, but who knows, man? He's pretty old.
One of these traits that caught me is curiosity, right? So we've talked about this, maybe not necessarily using those words in previous episodes, but we've talked about the concept of active listening, of being, asking tons of questions to your client and not just random questions, not like, oh, wow, yeah, I see you got a couple of pictures here of your family on the wall. Like, wow, that looks like a really nice vacation. Where'd you go? But more like curious about them as an individual, like what makes them tick, what makes them think the way that they think. And this is something that, Brian, you and I have interviewed at this point, shoot, how many is it? Well over 100. It's got to be coming up to 200 people on this show. And ideally, what the listeners find to be worthwhile and why they keep coming back is because we are curious about the person that we are interviewing and about what they are bringing to the table. And this is by definition what an interview is. Like, we are asking questions. We are orienting ourselves to learn more about them, their story, their successes, their failures, the reason they do what they do, why it worked, why it didn't work, and so on and so on. And if you can demonstrate that level of curiosity with your homeowner, one, you're following the old adage that it's better to be interested than it is to be interesting, right? By being curious. But two, like, I think you might actually be surprised about where it leads you. By asking enough questions, you're eventually going to uncover some information that is actually going to provide you with value as a connection point and as a sales presentation tool to that homeowner.
And just life in general. Jordan Peterson had that saying where he said, which was fantastic. It was just awesome. He said, every time you have a conversation with anyone, no matter what their role is, speak to them and listen to them as if you have something amazing to learn from them, because you do. And if you're talking to people like that, like, yeah, go on. And you just keep expecting that nugget to come out that's going to change everything for you. Hey, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Probably it doesn't. But if you're talking to them like it's going to, can you imagine their reaction to having somebody listen to them this deeply for maybe the first time ever? I'm not speaking from experience here. I'm not a great listener, bro.
That harkens back to that concept, which is another trait, is modesty, right? Is the acceptance of the fact that I don't always have to be talking. I don't always have to be saying something that I know or that I did or that I am, and that I can actually ask a question and be confident in knowing that somebody else can speak to.
Yeah, buddy. You do a great job of that when it's time for me to kick some real knowledge and you pipe down finally. It's called knowing your place.
Yes. Well, Brian, you definitely demonstrate no lack of discouragement in that area. All right. Well, what's another one that stood out to you?
That one, lack of discouragement. That was probably my third favorite on the list. We just said number 2. Number 3 is lack of discouragement. It says, less than 10% of top salespeople were classified as having high levels of discouragement and being frequently overwhelmed with sadness. Conversely, 90% were categorized as experiencing infrequent or only occasional sadness. So, and the other article called that, it was number 13. They're optimistic and upbeat. And he said top salespeople tend to be upbeat and radiate a sense of humor, fun, and general positivity, While grounded in reality, they focus on what they can control. Stay on course with optimism about what they can achieve, and don't let the rest drag them down. So, two ways to say the same thing. I love the ones that they that intersected there, where they're both on both of the lists. But that's a big one, because you're pessimists. I'll find a problem for every solution, or as Joe Rogan called them, the I can't catch a break guy. Oh, woe is me, poor me. They don't sell. They don't. But I've seen, and you've seen, pessimists become optimists. Really negative people become positive people, and you watch their sales and customer reviews skyrocket. People pay for an experience, even in the home services. It's why you see so many ratings and reviews say they're really expensive. I found out I could have gotten a electrical panel done for 1/3 the price they did it, but they're so worth it. It's like, worth it. It's the exact same material. It's the exact same stuff. It's the same inspector coming afterwards to make sure everything's done right. Maybe similar warranties. But people will pay for an experience of having somebody who treats them in a way that they remember this thing. It's why this optimism part and fun, almost, I like the curiosity thing too. You're just like almost a childish optimism, and someone who's fun to be around is always going to be a better salesperson because people want to be around them.
That's right, Brian. That takes me back to my favorite Brian that's been on this podcast, the founder of Ugg Boots.
Oh, right.
And he talked about how, if you haven't listened to that episode, make sure you go back and listen to it. It was from, let's see here, Memorial Day of this year, which was May 27th. Great episode there. And he talks about how, when he was the founder of Ugg Boots and we brought it to America, he kept positioning his Ugg Boots as this pretty male model and this pretty female model. And he was selling what he thought was this couple who looked very attractive. Oh, and they were also wearing boots. But what he didn't realize is that he was actually working against himself, because the experience that he was selling was being perceived as fake by the actual people he was trying to sell to. He was trying to sell to the surfer community, and they saw these ads and they said, well, that's a bunch of bunk. These aren't real people. These aren't real surfers. This is just a total sham and a total setup. So he had to switch gears, and he changed from using, models on a beach to using actual surfers. And it changed the authenticity of the experience, because now the buyer was interested in the product because it matched up with their interest and with the authenticity that they were trying to drive after. So now the Ugg boot brand matched with the surfer mentality and the surfer experience, and then it caught wildfire and went on from there. And the reason I bring that up is because what you're talking about there, Brian, is the experience, right? The experience that you provide in the home services needs to be authentic. It has to be genuine. You can't be fake. If you are fake, you'll probably get some sales, but they'll probably cancel frequently. They'll probably be disgruntled after the fact. They'll probably, you'll get a lot of that. It sounds great, but I probably want to do some checking around, because people are smelling something that seems off. But if you portray yourself in the experience that this is the real me, this is the real company that I work for, this is the real service that I'm going to provide, there's an attractiveness to that, and it matches up with what people want. And no longer are you being perceived as a fake model in the home who just plays a plumber on TV. You actually are a genuine plumber who's going to do genuine hard work in the home and is going to fix the problem for the client. And when you align those things in the head of the client, from the way you're talking to the way you're portraying yourself to the work that you're going to do, to the promises that you're making, that you actually carry the whole way through, you too will catch wildfire, and people are willing to pay for that experience.
Unless you're in electrical. No wildfires, please. Another great one, probably my favorite, because it's one we've just really kind of pressed on and harped on and gotten back to over and over again lately on the show and in my trainings. They are persistent.
Mm.
Persistence, when done respectfully and consistently, breaks through. It reminds customers that you are there with a solution to their problems. It gives them multiple chances to connect. And though it may take half a dozen times to get a response, land that meeting, or open a discussion, they will thank you in the end. That was a quote added to the article by Michael Melberg, co-founder of Modern Da Vinci. I don't know what that is. Anywho, a great quote, because that is how it goes, is the ones that are the hardest fight to get to the yes. And when I say fight, I don't want it to sound like I'm positioning us against the client, because I wouldn't say I never, like there was a time when I thought being argumentative was the way, but when I understood that it was me and the client versus the things that are in the way of them doing business with us. So it was me and the client as a tag team match against the Big Show. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if everybody's old enough for the Big Show.
No.
When it was a team effort and we're fighting against the objections and we get that client through to the other side, they were the biggest fans. Always. They're the ones who wrote books and poems and songs and letters, but literal letters to the company. And these letters would get hung up on the wall. It was like, oh, he stayed there for 2 hours helping us at the kitchen table, get through all these things and helping us figure all these things out. And like, I've had these written about me more times than I can count, and thousands of client reviews over the last 11 years in leadership, where the tech would come into just so thrilled, euphoric over the fact that he actually got this sale, because it took everything he had. And then inevitably 4 days later, we'd get the review or the letter or the phone call or whatever. And the client would just go on and on and on about how persistent he was and how grateful they were for that persistence. So they casually say, probably not right now. We'll give you a call after Easter, and you just dust your hands off like, I did my job here. And I'm okay. Yeah. Jot this one down for the April install. Like those, somebody did that work, man.
Right.
The next company or the next tech who goes out on a maintenance 9 months later, somebody's getting that work. It just wasn't you.
When I was in middle school, I used to take some of my study halls and play chess against my math teacher, Mr. Aldhouse. So if you're listening, Mr. Aldhouse, good memories from that. So thank you for that. But one of the things that he describes about some of my chess games was he said I was tenacious, right? Which is another word for persistent, and specifically persistence in trying to win, trying to overcome the struggle or the hurdle that's in front of you. Because when you play the game of chess, like sometimes you lose a piece that you did not see coming. Sometimes your strategy gets completely blown up, and you have to pivot, and you have to pivot quick, and you have to try to figure out how to win. And even when you're down to just literally your king, you can still try to play for a stalemate. Like even when you're in your darkest way, you can still try to be tenacious. And it's a good attribute, and I think it deserves its due, being on a list of high performers, specifically successful salespeople, because it is that persistency, as we've talked about on the show and other guests have as well. Call, text, email, call, text, email, call, text, email, that persistent follow-up, that persistent objection overcoming, that persistency of making sure that you are delivering the service that you are saying that you're going to deliver. It is a good thing, and it will drive you very far in this career.
Here, buddy. Were there any that you disagreed with? Or maybe not. I don't think there was any I disagreed with, but there may be one or two that you saw that you were like, I don't know about that one.
So, I mean, there's some interesting ones on here that are kind of pay to play stuff, right? I mean, like they're honest, they're insightful.
The honest one I thought was worth a mention and worth chopping up a little bit.
Okay. What drew that to your mind?
Well, what does it say under the honest part? It says, a successful salesperson will not fib to close a deal, because he or she knows that you've not only burned that bridge, but all of the potential other bridges that lead from your contact to their contacts. Better to miss out on a deal and maintain your honesty, integrity, and network. Now, that was Ollie Smith, the founder of Energy Seek. That's a very grade school definition of or reason for why you would be honest. And it's the lowest level of why you need to be honest in a sales call. Much higher and more rewarding than that is the fact that every time you tell the smallest fib on a sales presentation, you are hurting your integrity to yourself. And you think that you can bend and mold and flex and play with your integrity without it having any physical or emotional impact on you. But you can't. It's written on your face. It comes out in your tonality. You get a look like someone who does that, and you never know it. And you end up having to become, I've seen this in people, you become a steamroller or a bully on the call to get a sale, and your conversion rate never really ticks up because you're the type of person that would lie, cheat, and steal to get a sale. So when you're talking to someone, and there are people who aren't that perceptive, there are people that can easily get taken advantage of. But then there are the people who can't, who see right through that. And you never get to sell those people. And you just think of them as D-bags or not your people or whatever. And what you don't realize is they just see right through you. Oftentimes they used to be that type of person. And, you can come back from that like you can pretty much come back from anything, most things. And when you get someone like that, very oftentimes an ex-addict or someone who grew up a certain way and then changed later on, they see that. They know you. They can smell you a mile away, and you just never sell that person. You can't afford to bend and reshape your integrity. It takes so long to rebuild it. Coming from someone who has had to rebuild it through multiple addictions, completely having to start over from the bottom. Look, most people don't know what I've done and been through when you meet them, but I knew. So you have to start at the ground floor and work yourself back up into an honest, non-addict human being. And then there are people out there who aren't struggling with things like that, but do find it easier to bend the truth a little bit when they're on a sales call. And I'm here to tell you, not for the client's sake, not for the company's sake, for your own personal sake, stop now. You're done. Don't do it again. Start building your client list out of pure, raw integrity. And it feels slower now, but you never get on the fast track when you do it the other way. You'll get on the fast track doing it this way, building your presentation and your client base and your confidence and your personality on a solid foundation of principles and integrity and truth and honesty. And then when you hit that fast track, and that fast track just means you got a $3,000-$4,000 ticket average and you close it 85, 88, 92%. So at any time you can just walk out the door, walk into a home, and you're going to make the money you want to make. And your customers are raving lunatic fans. That's the fast track. You will never get there as a conniving cheat because you'll never sell the people who can see through that. So stop.
That's well said, Brian. And I think in today's modern age, especially we talk a lot about the sales culture and how the trades perceives it. There is a misperception, although not always unfounded, that high performers are cheats or that they're willing to say anything to get the job done. And that does not have to be your story, nor do you have to be dishonest to be a top performer or to have great success.
No, and I can't factually speak to really 100% positively speak to anyone's presentation except my own when I was in a truck because I was there, right? But I'll tell you this, we've never had a high performer on this show that someone wasn't upset about them coming on because they believe they're a cheater. Everyone. Chris Voss, FBI hostage negotiator, wrote Never Split the Difference. Probably the best book on sales out there as far as I'm concerned, or at least communication, negotiation. Go to Amazon and read the reviews for his book. Flip over to the 1 stars. Watch what people say about him. You can't get away from it. Like, you're going to have people tearing you down if you decide to go big. Pay them no mind. The important part is what you think about yourself. And I'm not how do you sleep at night? You won't be able to sleep at night. I think you'll sleep fine on a $800 pillow. Honestly, I think you'll be all right. But you're going to miss so much of what life has to offer because the more perceptive people will see you as a cheat, pick that up, and steer clear of you. They'll just have nothing to do with you.
It's a good word, Brian, and something that we all need to consider.
You don't need to consider that, bro. What are you talking about? You're incapable of telling a lie.
Yeah, if only. One thing that I want to wrap up, at least on my side of the list here, Brian, one thing that gave me encouragement, helped me feel a little bit better, is that some of the top sales personalities lack gregariousness. Now, I know that might be surprising because you know me to be the life of the party. And when I walk into a room, everybody just turns and looks and it gets amped up.
Oh, sorry. What? I'm sorry. Excuse me. You were talking.
So I know you know that to be my personality, but believe it or not, it's not. And I find it encouraging that according to these personality traits of top salespeople, that doesn't have to be me. And I think a lot of listeners who listen to this would find confidence and a level of encouragement in that, knowing that they don't have to be Brian Burton. They don't have to be, Barnum and Bailey or the Ringling Brothers or something like that. They don't have to be this incredible entertainment show to be top salespeople. It is possible to do it with different approaches. That doesn't mean that you aren't still supposed to be interactive and engaging with the client, but you don't have to be putting on this 3-ring circus with magic tricks.
Yeah. And I know plenty of top performing salespeople. I don't know if shy is the word because they can have a conversation with anybody pretty easily. So they definitely can turn on extroversion when they need to, but they're not the life of the party. Like Brent Buckley is the biggest HVAC salesperson we've ever had on this show at 14.7 million in 1 year. And that's him, man. Like if he and I went out together, it would be a lot like you and I going out together. I'd be doing most of the talking to strangers and stuff. He's just cool to lay back and let things happen. And he's not that outgoing. And you would think at his numbers, he would sound like, Andy Elliott or something. Just always on, always charged up, always going. That's not him at all. The first time I asked him to do the show and he told me he had done other shows, I was like, you did? I would never imagine you were going to go on people's podcasts. And that's how we got turned on to some of the other trade shows. Cause he was like, yeah, I did. To the point, what was the other one? Masters of the Hustle and a couple other ones. So I went and listened to him and I'm like, and then became fans of some of those other shows, But yeah, he's somewhat of an introvert. He's laid back. And a lot of the top salespeople are like that. I would say the difference is when I'm thinking of a true introvert, I'm thinking of somebody who's not going to really be able to step up and have a weird, hard conversation with a bunch of strangers. It's just not going to happen. And these people can turn it on in a second and your head will spin at how good they are.
All right, Brian, well, as we bring things in for a landing here, what was the one that was most surprising or encouraging or just odd to you?
If there was one that I pulled back a little from when I read it, it was number 14 on the Business News Daily. They have a broad worldview and cultural understanding. Now, I did when I was selling, but the fact that I sold timeshares in Las Vegas for 1.5 years, I was sitting in front of people from all over the world 2 to 3 times a day. And all I did was soak up. I took notes. I actually learned to write upside down at these little round tables, and I wrote upside down and took notes about everything they were telling me. And it got to be really cool because all of a sudden, every time someone from Australia came in, I had all kinds of little fun tidbits that I knew from previous couples that I'd engaged with.
True or false? Did you ever say, that's not a knife?
Absolutely. Snatched out my spider comb like, that's a knife.
And immediately lost that sale.
But so I had that. I wouldn't even forget that story because I think it actually did help me later on for sure. But the people who don't have that, I don't even know of another very high performing top producer who's like that. Now, a difference could be in this article. They could have been specifically asking people who do international sales and maybe international phone sales and stuff like that. So I don't really know. There isn't enough content for me to understand where that one came from, but it could have come from people who do international selling. And in that case, you better have a good understanding of other people's cultures. But outside of that, I'm not sure about that one. I'm not sure how that one's all that beneficial. Hey, if you're bilingual in an area where a lot of people have English as their second language, sure, that's going to help. But outside of that, I don't know.
I mean, broad worldview, cultural understanding, like I could see how it would help.
Yeah.
Certainly depends where you are. If you're in Lancaster County.
But if you only had
probably doesn't have to be too broad.
No. Better be familiar with horses. But if you're going to put together a very short list of personality traits of top salespeople, is that one making it?
No, probably not.
That's where I was coming from. Would I've put this on my own list?
I would take curiosity 10 times over worldview.
Yeah.
Because you can get there. If you're curious enough, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, and that one was another one that was big on my list, probably my fourth favorite. And I was actually surprised that one was mentioned, curiosity. It was number 4 on the Harvard Business Review article. Curiosity can be described as a person's hunger for knowledge and information. 82% of top salespeople scored extremely high curiosity levels. Top salespeople are naturally more curious than their lesser performing counterparts. I see this all the time. And the top salespeople, if I ask questions, technical questions about the product that are outside of what your normal training would be, like outside of the norm that all salespeople would know, the highest levels of income earners, the top people, usually have the answer to these obscure questions. And why is that?
Ask enough questions, get enough answers.
Yeah. While the average and below average performers are scrolling TikTok, these men and women are just out of curiosity learning more about their product. They're looking information about their product up. Also, when they run into an engineer, homeowner, and this person has more knowledge than them, they don't skulk away like, hopefully I don't run into another engineer. They're like, everything this person said, I am going to learn, and then 10 times more. It's that achievement orientation. Challenge accepted. I'll never get beat like that again. And then the curiosity kicks in and they go down a massive rabbit hole of information and overload with things that they probably don't even need to know. But that's the top performers. That's how they roll.
So good we even hit it twice, Brian. Make sure you're curious. Stay curious out there, right?
Sparkies are all curious. Don't worry about that.
Well, it's been good, and I hope that you've enjoyed walking through these 21 opportunities for you to increase some of your personality traits towards becoming a great salesperson. Let us know which ones stood out to you, or which ones that you have a problem with, or think that shouldn't be on the list, or that you've overcome without necessarily being a top performer in one of these traits. We'd love to hear from you and your feedback. Or maybe it's time for you to do a little bit of introspection and take a look about some of the things that you ranked 2, 1 on your list in terms of how you're doing on them. And maybe you can work with a mentor or somebody in your friend group, or even just yourself at making improvements in those areas. And hopefully we will see the success to follow. Thanks for bringing these topics to our podcast today, Brian. It's good to always have some content to be discussing. We hope that you are living the victorious life out there and that you are improving. And as we bring things in for a landing on this particular episode, we would love to know what it is about this show that is making you improve. Where have you found success? And where are you going to take it next? Make sure that you're sharing this episode as well as some others with some friends who could use some encouragement and who could be striving with you to become top salespeople. It's time now to leave you with our weekly challenge, which remains the same: to choose to wake up each and every morning and waste no day.